we've got a whole new build series going on again. This time in McFry, the black sedan. There's the OG car, there's the one that I went for my P-plate test in when I was a kid. I've still got the car. Drifting, racing and burnout. So these are the three main things I do in the car now. The whole street thing is out of the equation. So the whole purpose of this overhaul, as you'd like to call it, is to make it better at drifting, better at racing, better at burnouts. I've got the word budget in here in case the wife is watching. So I'm going to go through what I'm going to improve in all this stuff to make it better. So obviously at the moment it drifts okay, but it doesn't handle that well. I'll probably make it look like I do, but it handles really bad, the car. For racing it's too heavy. For burnouts, I suppose it's not bad at burnouts, but it doesn't make the smoke it's meant to make, sort of thing. So we're going to improve all that. Alright, let me give you a basic rundown of what we're doing with the car in this video. So I bought a full fiberglass front end for the car, fiberglass doors, not the rear doors, just the front doors. I'm also going to cut the whole tunnel out of the car. I'm cutting the firewall out, I'm moving the engine back, leveling the engine out as well. I'm also fitting a rack and pinion steering, getting rid of the old factory steering box. I'm also redoing the rear suspension in the car as well. So currently the rear suspension in the car is really bad. When you put a 9-inch diff in these, you try and lower it down, the upper arms, the factory upper arms end up getting on a really bad angle and it just throws out all the bar angles really bad. So I'm actually going to improve the bar angles, try and get the car, well not try, I'm going to get the car lower in the rear. So I want to get the car lower in the back end. I'm also going to lower the chassis on the body of the car to get the pretty much the whole car lower to the ground. I'm also going to, when I move the motor back, I want to try and get the motor down as low as I can. So I'm going to cut the cross member out. I want to try and get the center of gravity of the car lower as well. That's a big thing you'll notice with a lot of drift cars. The center of gravity of the cars are really low to the ground, and it just helps tremendously in how the cars handle. Obviously, the big thing with drifting is a lot of drift cars run IRS rear suspension, and they just work so much better when the car's sideways. I'm still going to stick with the solid diff in the rear, only because I want to do racing and everything else as well. And I'm still keeping the automatic in, because it actually drifts alright with the automatic, and for me to put a manual in this, I'll probably break it, let's face it. No, the only manual I'd sort of want for this thing would be some sort of a dog box. I've been looking at them and they're sort of expensive. The 6XD sequential box is like the one I'd really like. You know, the price of one of them, by the time I got it installed in the car with all the stuff, it's probably going to be like $40,000. That's a lot of money to spend on something I do not need. So I'm going to keep the automatic, I'm going to work with it. Yeah, let's have a look. Okay, so the rack and pinion setup I ended up going with is from McDonald Brothers. I just liked the setup of how they did theirs, and when I install it, I may not install it with their supplied bracket they've got here. So the way that's the setup is it goes where the lower control arm bolts are, and they just go through there, and that's what holds it. This plate is very thick too and heavy, so I might end up just mounting this direct to the cross member when I modify it, but I'll see how I go with that. This is a tunnel kit I bought. I think I got that for like $700, but it's like complete tunnel kit, so it's fairly cheap, so I bought it. It's got some random cross member stuff that I'll probably end up using. The fiberglass front I bought from Alpha Fiberglass. And they also wrote all the weights on everything. So 5.75 kilos. So that's the guard and the inner guard. It's also got inner guards as well. I got the inner guards because when you do track stuff, all the rubber flicks up, and I don't really want rubber flicking up everywhere in the engine bay. So I bought a pin-on bonnet. So this is the lightest style of sort of bonnet you can get. Looks like it's got pool noodle foam in there, but that's just to help support it. So this bonnet is 8.5 kilos, 8.5. The factory steel bonnet, which I've got sitting over there against the wall, that's 22 kilos, I believe it is, 23 kilos. So this whole front end, the guards, inner guards, that nose cone, the whole front end in fiberglass weighs 23 kilos, and that's what the bonnet weighed. So the whole front end in fiberglass weighs exactly what that bonnet weighs. So it's going to take a decent amount of weight off the front of the car. Fiberglass doors. I'm probably just going to not have windows in these. I will put Perspex windows in them. Obviously if I go to race it, because they usually want you to have windows in the car for drag racing. Everything else, I don't believe they require windows, so I'm not too worried about windows. This motor here on the engine stand, this is going to go in McFry. So this is a spare engine. There's a point there where I was blowing motors up left, right and centre, and I thought I needed a spare motor, and I get a spare motor, and now McFry's reliable and it hasn't had any issues. So I really didn't need it. But I'm going to fit this motor in the car with a valley scavenge setup, and I bought a bigger oil pan. So this is a full-size oil pan with a kick out, because I'm going to cut the cross member and everything, and that oil pan is going to work a lot better than the one I've got on it. I'm also highly considering fitting, this looks like a Macca's tray, but these are those box sprint car air cleaners. This is just the lower half of the tray. I want to fit one of them to the car. I think they look badass, and I just want to fit one. They look cool. I reckon it'll look mad up the back here with the bonnet on and everything, so that's going to be the plan with that. I've also got engine plates. So I've got a front engine plate, a rear engine plate in that box. Some suspension parts. I can't remember where I bought these from. It was a website that there was an ad that popped up, believe it or not. But they sell all this stuff, which is very handy. And that's just a cross member from this is a competition engineering cross member, which I just bought from Outlaw Speed Shop. So this car used to always have overheating oil issues. I've actually solved the overheating oil issues by fitting this massive oil cooler. So this is it's chunky. This thing weighs like 8 kilos. I was a bit disappointed when I bought it and weighed it and seen how much heavy it was, but it works so well. So ever since I fitted this oil cooler, the oil temperature at that drift day I did when it was hot, it didn't even get above 100 Celsius. So it works incredible. Another thing I'm going to do is I need to get this oil tank out of the boot. Let me open the boot up. Alright, so this is the boot of McFry. So I usually have nitrous bottles here, massive fuel tank, oil tank. Having all the weight in the back of the car, it makes it very boaty. The oil tank I always seem to have oil surging issues. What essentially happens is if I have the oil tank filled to about, I don't know where the baffle is, about here, when I'm revving the freckle out of it, the oil probably, with the sump set up and everything I got in the motor, I don't have a valley scavenge set up either, so a lot of oil sits in the heads, but the oil would probably sit down around here somewhere. And then what happens is sometimes I tip it in and the oil must move away from the pickup, and then I get an oil surge and then the Haltech shuts the car down. It's happened 3 times now, so I'm going to move this oil tank up the front of the car. I did find a band-aid fix. If I fill this thing up to about here with oil, like overfill it, it won't do the surging problems. But every time the car's flicking around and stuff, it's just spewing oil out of there. So I'm just going to move that oil tank up the front, so just to get rid of any problems I have like that. The fuel tank is a bit big. I wouldn't mind probably downsizing that fuel cell. The thing is actually, well, this car is pretty economical, believe it or not. Now it's EFI. Even on methanol, it doesn't seem to use a bucket load of fuel, so I don't really need to have a fuel tank that big. I believe it's a 20 gallon. I could probably move back down to a 15 gallon, and it's going to get less weight out of the car. This doesn't really have a surge tank either, so this is the fuel pump, and I need to have the fuel tank fairly full to avoid having fuel surge issues. So it's going to be better if I get a smaller tank, so I can just have less fuel in the system, and it's going to have less weight in the back of the car. It's just going to make it better. And haven't really decided about the fuel tank, if I want to try and move it further that way, that sort of thing. I'll figure that out later in the video. Alright, let's have a look at the underneath of McFry here. I have no secrets under here. It does have a 5-stage dry sump in this. So I currently just got 4 scavengers throughout this pan, but later in the video I'm going to fit a valley scavenge and then just 3 scavengers in the pan with that full size pan too. So this is just a modified wet sump pan where I've just got 3 scavengers. Where are they? Under there. There's 3 scavengers there in the bottom of the pan at the back. The other pan I bought is a full size with a kick out, so it's pretty much full depth to about here, all the way along, and then has a huge kick out at the side. It's going to be a lot better for oil control, and the valley scavenger is going to help a lot too. So the brakes are Bayer brakes. These are massive, really good brakes, these ones. They just work incredible. They're heavy, but that's the biggest downside. So I've got Willwards on the ute at the moment, and I've got the Bayer brakes on this. For track stuff, these are way better. The Willwards are lighter, so they're good for racing, but I have had brake fade with the Willwards on many occasions, so that's why I put these on this car for the track stuff pretty much. So I don't have to worry about any brake fade issues. I might have to redo the headers as well when I move the engine back, which is going to suck, but I'll just work around that. These are my dry sump oil lines. They run to the boot. That's the feed and the return line. So all the oil, the dry sump setup, that pump pretty much feeds the oil to the motor, and all these scavengers here suck the oil out of the motor and return it to the tank in the boot. And that lines have always ran pretty close to the header pipe as well, which would not have helped with my oil getting hot issues. Under the back here, fairly basic, just 4 9-inch diff. It is shortened a little bit, so I've currently got these really gay looking Commodore wheels on the back at the moment. The diff, I think from factory, compared to a factory diff, it's shortened about 1 inch and a little bit each side, something like that, 1.5 inches, somewhere around there. To fit these wheels here, these are my racing wheels. Small tyre, so they're 15 by 10, 5-inch back space. They fit really good under the back. And for drifting I run, I've got them wheels out the back. For drifting I run taller, lower profile tyres, so I've got some 18 by 10 wheels for drifting with a 265 tyre. They seem to work really good under the back here. So there's a bit going on here. I've got, these are the coilovers I run to a bar at the top, and this is my anti-roll bar, and you'll also see that I also have a sway bar, so I've got double sway bars going on here. But for drifting, I actually I take this link out, so I remove the anti-roll bar essentially by removing that link, so it doesn't work anymore, and then it'll just work off this sway bar, and that is so I can get some sway in the diff, which is probably all going to change when I redo the car anyway, but that's just what I've been running at the moment. And I've always had issues with the diff leaking lots of oil, mainly for drifting. It's like the oil in the diff ends up swishing to the side, it just constantly pushes oil out the diff breather, so I'm going to have to redo that as well. These upper control arm mounts over here that go into the floor, that's what I want to move up. So these here, I want to try and get these something like that up in there, but I need to get these upper control arms higher at the front, because at the moment, once the car lowers down, the bar angles are just all over the place. I also need to get the coilovers, they need to get moved up into the boot, because at the moment they're just, I think they've got 5 inch of travel, and I can't get the car low enough. So I've done some shonky stuff here, very shonky stuff. I did that at the last drift event just to try and get the back of the car lower. But I'm gonna have to get the coilovers up into the boot of the car. The wheel tubs, it's been mini tubbed, the rail's been cut in. Starting here, it's just got a plate in there. I did these wheel tubs a long time ago. It's actually an old bonnet just cut up. The wheel tubs are very dodgy, but they've been working, so I'll see how I go with that. I might try and make the wheel tubs a little bit bigger in the video as well. I might even go crazy. I might even cut the whole floor out. I could do anything in this video. Depends how keen I am. But I am pretty keen, I've got to admit, so some crazy stuff's gonna happen in under here. So another thing I'm planning on doing with the car, unfortunately, is turning it into a 2-seater as well. So removing the back seat permanently. The back seat and the seat belts and everything is about 40 kilos alone just in the back seat. It's kind of unnecessary weight. I do like having people in the back of the car at events like Power Cruise Sydney, but there's no way in the world Power Cruise Sydney or GUP would let me drive that car on the track the way I do anyway, with people in the back seat, which is very unfortunate, because that was what I used to love doing in this car, is going out. But for safety reasons and stuff like that, drifting, you know, I get this car up to over 100 kilometers an hour sideways with people in the back. It's, you know, it's a bit dangerous. So I'll probably end up converting it to 2-seater. The race weight of the car at the moment, it's around 3,800 pounds. So when I race it down the drag strip, around 3,800 pounds. The best it's ever ran was an 8.5 down the quarter mile. I've always had issues getting it off the line. The best mile per hour I got was 165 mile an hour. That was with 450 shot of nitrous on E85. So there's potential for this car to actually be quite quick. It's just a very heavy car. At the moment, I've actually got 3 nitrous kits on the car. I'm too afraid to use them because I'm worried about blowing the thing up. But I do have 3 nitrous kits. It's about 450 horsepower. I could probably do 500 horsepower maximum. For me to do that safely, I'd probably have to use race gas, not E85. So I'll figure that out down the track, what I want to do with it. The biggest hurdle for an all-rounder car is making it good at all 3 things. Drifting usually wants a low center of gravity. You sort of want a 50-50 weight bias, ideally. So the car's like 50-50, need lots of steering lock. To get lots of steering lock, good caster camber and stuff, the wheels usually end up on angles and stuff like that, which usually isn't very good for racing. I found it even in the ute, when I go to race it, when you got camber on the front wheels, when they come up and down, the front wheels end up going all over the place. Like trying to control the bump steer with all the camber and all the stuff going on is just really hard. So, and racing, it sort of would do better with a 50-50 weight balance as well. If I can get it closer to that, it's going to help the car a lot, because it's a small tyre car. Especially for no prep and stuff like that. Roll racing even, to get the car better at roll racing, it's going to need more weight at the back of the car, because I've always had to add weight in the rear of the car, and to me, when you're adding weight in the rear of the car, it's just going backwards. It's just making the car heavier, slower, where all you need to do is try and get more of the weight up the front, further back, and then problem solved. Burnouts usually like to be front heavy in cars. So a front heavy car generally is going to do better at burnouts. This is what I've found anyway. when I've got lots of weight in the back of the car, it usually tips in really bad and it's harder to control. When there's less weight in the back of the car, it just spins better, way more controllable on a burnout pad, easier to stop the car, just everything's better. So burnout's front heavy, racing, drifting, they're both more 50-50. I think after I do all this stuff to the car, it's probably going to make it a bit worse for burnouts, but ideally my priority's sort of up here in the drifting and racing department. So let's get stuck into this build. I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek in the front end here, but before I do that, I just weighed the front end here. So the guards, nose cone, I just guessed the nose cone weight because it's got that stuff in it. So, but the front end and the bonnet compared to all the fiberglass front end ends up being 38 kilograms lighter. So replacing just the front end with a pin-on bonnet, removing the hinges, the old bonnet, the old steel stuff. This is fiberglass front, fiberglass guards, fiberglass inner guards, and the pin-on bonnet. Just that alone is 38 kilos removed from the front end. So that is actually huge. 38 kilos off the front already just by doing that. So a little sneak peek into this front end here, because a lot of people are very interested in what modifications I've done to get all the steering lock and stuff in this car. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. This is a HQ chassis, but I've welded on the HZ radial tune suspension upper control arm mounts. So the HQ mounts has the upper control arm sat about here and here, so it's moved forward. The HZ moves it backwards, which gives it more caster. So also the United Speed Shop upper control arm, if you look dead down on here, or straight down, mind this here, I did not need to do that, that was just a waste of my time. But they locate the upper ball joint backwards, not much, a little bit, but that's enough to add caster as well. So if you fit the United Speed Shop upper control arm on a HZ Holden, you're gaining roughly, I've got no idea how much caster. I've never actually measured it properly, but I'm assuming around 5 degrees, maybe even 6, something like that. That's without adding any shims in here to compensate. Actually, I think I might have welded these on. On an angle. That's probably why I've got no shims in here. So I think you might get about 4 degrees, and then you might have to add shims here to gain a bit more caster, or something like that. Anyway, roughly, let's just say 6 degrees of caster, stuffing around the upper control arm. Also fitted adjustable lower control arm bushes. So I just used the standard factory lower control arm, and I've fitted in white line cell the adjustable bushes, and you turn the bush and it moves the control arm in and out. I did that originally to extend the control arm out further, but now I've done it to I think I moved the control arm forward a bit, so because that's moved back so far to stop the wheel hitting the back of the inner guard. So the lower control arm, I've pretty much got it moved forward a little bit. I also extended the lower control arm by about 1 centimetre. I just welded in a big chunk of steel around there, roughly 1 centimetre, and that was enough to get 3 degrees of camber without having to go crazy with shims and stuff. So this car has 3 degrees of camber, 6 degrees of caster. And the toe I kind of just try and have roughly around, somewhere around straight. I've got something under the control arm there just holding it upright, so it's more, this is sort of how the car sits when it's on the ground. So full lock in this way, that's full lock. So I've actually modified another thing I modified, steering arms. You'll like this part. Here's my steering arms. So these are just factory Kings. I originally had the Trana ones on, which were good, but they just weren't right. So to correct the bumps and everything, I ended up having to do some really funky looking stuff, but not pretty at all, does it? And that's just the Heim joint, which is a lot better as well. So that's it. There's no stops on it either, which, as you can see with my rim here, it has been scrubbing on the lower control arm down there, because there's a lot of play in the steering too. So when this thing's actually at full lock, it's missing everything, but obviously once everything's been twisted up really hard and stuff, it still just rubs. So it's that's something I need to fix too when I'm doing this overhaul. So that is pretty much everything. Double adjustable shockies, got AFCO double adjustable shockies, which is good as well. And what I did with these control arms too is you'll see that I've moved them. This is where the factory one sits. Let me turn the light on. Sorry. Okay. So you can see the factory would probably sit around here, and I've moved this inbound to around here. So I've moved that in, and what that's done is it's actually changed the Ackerman steering, which I originally did that because what was happening is this front wheel would bend in and it kept hitting the sway bar. So I added Ackerman. So essentially what that is this wheel won't turn in as far, but the wheel over that side is going to turn more. So it essentially turns like an extra 4 degrees more than this wheel at full lock. So this will miss the sway bar and that wheel turns further, which I would much rather to revert back to the zero Ackerman, which it sort of had from factory, except the wheel just hit everything. So I also run a wheel spacer, 1 centimeter wheel spacer to space that wheel out a bit. So I would not mind doing some more clearancing down there, and I'd like to get more steering lock, really, it'd be great. I think that's about 48 degrees right there. When I measured it, it's 48 degrees of steering lock. That'll be 48, and then the inner wheel, it's probably going to peak out around 44 or something. So this wheel turns 4 degrees more. It's pretty complicated to understand the whole Ackerman thing, but if you do a Google search, you'll understand it. So that's the steering on McFry. That's how it is. The sway bar run is up there. I normally run that 28mm. It's a custom sway bar. I usually run that up the front for drifting. If I could get rid of the sway bar, it's going to free up a lot of room. So we'll see how we go. I also had to extend the tie rod as well, because when I moved the control arm out and moved them outbound, this had to be extended as well. So just another thing I had to do. It's a lot of modifications just there, and it all works really well. But essentially I just want to make it better, so I'm going to make it better than that and see how much extra lock we can get out of this thing. Alright, another day pulling stuff off the car. So this is the steering box factory setup. I just weighed that, it's 15 kilos. I weighed the rack and pinion with the steel plate, it's 10 kilos. So in total it's only 5 kilos difference, so it's not huge. But without that big heavy duty steel plate, that's only 6.5 kilos. So that plate is just very heavy. So 8.5 kilos lighter without the steel plate. I'm planning on hopefully mounting that rack direct to the cross member when I get to that point. So these are the oil lines that run into the boot. All that weight there. There's just a fair bit of weight there, just in lines running to the back. Because they're full of oil. It's just a lot. So, and these were running over the top of the headers. So I'm hoping, I don't know, I could maybe try get away with not running the oil cooler. I don't know, but I want to mount the tank somewhere up the front here. So once it's up the front, if I can get some cool air to it, it might actually help as well, cool the oil down. Don't know, not sure, but I'll figure that out later on in this build. So the big dog oil cooler that works really well is really heavy, which really sucks. So it's even got a really good spell fan on it. Absolutely pumps that thing. Unfortunately, full of oil is 10 kilos. So that is a lot of weight, especially right at the front of the car. So, might be getting the cut. Alright, we're just doing a quick basic example here. So this is my crane scale. It is actually quite accurate. I'm just going to weigh this door and then weigh the other door somehow. Okay. Now what's that? 6.6 kilos with a fiberglass door. Keep in mind too, this door, fiberglass door, still has the all the support in here as well. So if you really wanted to, you could cut this out and stuff, but then you got to put something else there. What's it say, guys? I had to stop the video and come have a look, but 29.8 kilos, so it's nearly 30 kilos just for this door. So 30 kilos, 6.6, but this has door hinges. I'm going to fit 3D printed door hinges to these doors like I did on the Ute, and they literally weigh like 500 grams, so that'll be 7.1 kilos, 7.2 kilos. Opposed to 30 kilos, so that's 23, 22 after I put the door lock and stuff in it, 22 kilos. So these doors, fitting those doors is 22 kilos per side, so that's going to be 44 kilos in total off the weight of the car, which is a big gain, but I always knew the doors were a big gain because when I put them on the Ute, it was a massive gain. So here we're pretty much, all that equals, we've taken 100 kilos off the car. Fiberglass front end, fiberglass doors, and the rack and pinion. In total, that's just 100 kilos right there. That's not including the oil cooler. The oil cooler would be 110, but I'm not sure if that's going back on yet or not. So we'll just say 100 for now in that stuff. And the rear doors I'm going to keep steel, but I'm probably going to pull the door cover off. Pretty sure the door covers are 1.5, 2 kilos each. But if I get that out, the metal, all the winders and stuff inside, can probably even replace this with Perspex. That should be plenty enough for the rear doors. Don't need to go too over the top on them. It's more getting weight off the front that's the issue, so that's why I didn't worry about fiberglass rear doors. Probably remove the center console. Don't know about all that stuff. It sort of looks neat. Have to wait and see. If anyone is interested, the rear doors are 23.8 kilos each with the hinges. Alright, I'm going to wrap the video up here. Otherwise it's just going to go for way too long. Next video will be taking the motor out, gearbox out, just stripping the interior, the wiring, all that sort of stuff. And then I'll start to figure out what the game plan is and get the grinder out, start cutting stuff, weighing more stuff, and removing weight as we go, and making a nice light race car.